Hey guys, hey Debbie, I'm back. I am actually going to do this presentation here while I'm riding my bike. This is how I get my workout in. Okay, so let me turn the camera around here. All right, so this is where we left off on cedar. Now, let me just say, folks, those of you who aren't familiar with trees, like me, who is not familiar with trees, who decided to do this badge so I could learn some stuff. I can't believe how much I'm learning. Like, trees are super duper complicated and totally not what I thought they were. So props to you foresters and tree farmers and just anybody in the forest community. I got props because I cannot believe how much I didn't know about these plants and trees and shrubs and everything else. But anyways, we are looking at cedar right here. And let's see if I can stop shaking here. Okay, so we're looking at cedar. And cedar, okay, the genus Cedrus indicates that it's a true cedar. There are true cedars and false cedars, okay? Thankfully, there's only 4 species of true cedar. And the only reason I say thankfully is because in doing a lot of these things, there's so many different species of so many different things. And the true cedars, there are only 4, okay? And they are not native here to North America, to the United States, or anything like that. They're in the Himalayas and in the Mediterranean. Now, this is where it's confusing, at least it was to me. We refer to trees as cedar here, but they are not true cedar. They are false cedar because they are in a completely different genus, and it's not cedrus. So cedrus is true cedar. Okay, does that make sense? Is that about as clear as mud? Because that's where we're at. Okay, so there are 4 species of true cedar. Okay, now I'm just going to go real quickly through the 4 because I really want to kind of get more into the more native stuff. So there's Atlas cedar, Cedrus atlantica. It's also known as blue atlas, and it can be identified by their brown-gray bark. That's one of their indicators. And I'm not going to go through all the different types of foliage just because I'm going to go real simplified on that just to kind of help you understand, those of you who don't, because I did not. Okay, then there's Cyprian cedar, Cedrus brevifolia, or brevifolia. I might have spelled that wrong there. So the needles are short in short clumps, and this particular cedar has very short branches. The shorter branches, shorter needles, shorter clumps of needles. I'm sorry if I'm shaking so much there. Apologize. Okay, so there we are. So that's Cyprian. That's the number 2. The third kind of cedar that is true cedar is Cedrus libaniani, and it is cedar Lebanon, and it has kind of flat tops and branches, and they actually grow out horizontally. And you know, looking at this cedar tree, it kind of reminds me of a big version of a bonsai tree. Seriously, that's what I think of. It's kind of pretty. Anyways, okay, and so then the 4th cedar is also known as Himalayan cedar, the Cedrus deodara or deodar cedar. These trees, they kind of are pointy at the top and then they flatten out, and their branches are really swooping and they're really big, wide, swooping branches. Okay, so those are the 4 types of true cedar. Okay, and again, if you're looking at this, this is super duper simplified. All right. Indicators of a true cedar versus a false cedar. True cedars have needle clusters that are on woody pegs, and they kind of have larger cones, but not necessarily. I should probably just take that out, larger cones, because there are false cedars that have huge cones. But they're all conifers. They all have cones, but just rule of thumb, I guess, is that true cedars would have a little bit bigger cones. Now, false cedars, the foliage is more feathery. I don't know if you can see that. So that might look a little bit more familiar of what we see here too. I mean, we see both, but whether you have like needles on woody pegs or this feathery foliage with little cones, and the cones are really small. Okay, so there's that. Now, false cedars, do not be fooled by false cedars. The reason why I say that is we're kind of programmed here in the United States that true is good and false is bad, right? Well, it's just because they're not in the cedrus genus. Okay, they're still cedar according to us. That's why we call them cedars. So these cedars aren't officially the genus cedrus, but we all call them cedar trees. But they're quote unquote false cedars, and they're still extremely important. They have an immense significance to the forest communities here in North America, just an enormous significance, and I'll tell you why, or I'll show you why here in a few. Scientific names will be most dependable in determining the cedar from false cedar, because cedrus is obviously the genus of true cedar, and cupressus is the genus of cypress, which is what most false cedars are. Not all of them, but most of them are. That's really a good indicator, okay? Now, here's a power pack with a punch. This one absolutely blew me away. I don't know if that tree looks familiar to you. It didn't to me, probably because the ones that we see like that are really big, but it is a very famous kind of false cedar, okay? Here's a hint. There is a song called "This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land, from California to the New York Island." Do you remember singing that as a kid? From the what? Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. Redwood Forest, you guys. This is a younger version of the larger trees that you may think of when you think of the Redwood Forest, right? The very, very famous Redwood Forest that everybody goes to go see. Let me go to the next slide. Does that look more familiar? What about that? Okay, those are the big daddies of the Redwood Forest. And those are false cedars. What? Yes, they are. The giant sequoias, they make up 3 of the famous trees that we know as the redwoods. Okay, there's the redwood, there's the giant sequoias or something. So they are actually false cedar. They aren't cedars. They come from the family Cupressus, which is that cypress family. And here, if you look, those are the cones and the foliage of a giant sequoia, and they are the most massive trees on earth. They are huge. Obviously, we've seen them in postcards. You drive through them, all of that. They are only in groves in the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in California, the redwood forest. So, when you think of false cedar, that's not necessarily a negative thing. The cedars are, it's just the genus name. All right, so here's some other false cedars, or, what we refer to as false cedar. More of the cypress. Okay, so there's the Alaskan yellow cedar, which is Cupressus nutcanensis. I don't know. And the northern white cedar, the Thuja occidentalis, whatever. Okay, so these are native to the upper northwest of North America, and they have really, I don't know if you can see that, very droopy branches. Now, if you look on the right, those are both what we know of, both on the left and the right. Those are all known as what we call arborvitae. Now, the arborvitae on the right, those 2 pictures are probably more what you're used to seeing because they've been very cultivated and shaped to be pretty, so like for landscaping. So, this picture on the right may not be something you want to have in your yard, number 1, because it's big, and 2, it's just not as pretty and, cute as what's on the right. Okay, so the other cypress that I picked to kind of do a little report on is the Lawson's cypress. And the reason why I did is because it's native here to Oregon. Port Orford, Oregon, to be precise, because it's also known as the Port Orford cedar. And I'm not even going to try to say that name, okay? But these trees, they're native to Oregon, and they can grow up to 200 feet tall, which is pretty darn big. They are evergreens, and they're okay, so their foliage, like I was telling you, is very lacy and flat, okay? It is coniferous, does have cones, and the cones on this one are big. They're about 9 inches in diameter, and they have 6 to 10 scales, and they're very, very fragrant, and they smell like ginger. That's kind of what they've been compared to. So it kind of reminds me of those really big pine cones you get at Christmas. that are in the store that smell. I wonder if that's from Lawson's. I don't know, Lawson's Cypress. Anyways, the wood is used a lot for boat building because it's very strong and it's very resistant to rot, even in like big exposure and long exposure to salt water. The oil from that wood is often used in insecticide. And because the wood is very straight, a lot of times it's used in stringed instruments like guitars and stuff like that, and also in arrow shafts. So that's pretty cool. Now here is another one. This was, I was going to make it a power pack, but the truth is it is a species, and so I wanted to count as one of my 15 species here. Bermuda cedar, or the Juniperus bermudiana. Now, this is actually a juniper, and it was in the island of Bermuda, and it covered much of the island, okay? In an event as known as the blight, or the cedar blight, this species pretty much got wiped out, you guys. That's really sad. But seriously, 99% of it is gone. So settlers cleared part of the forest, and then in 1940, during the Second World War, the U.S. came over to build air bases, and when they came over, they brought scale insects with them that killed and devastated 99% of those trees, which is basically all of them. I mean, if you think of 99%. And then also made a variety of the pollinators to become completely extinct, which is so sad. So this picture, guys, is actually a postcard of what they used to be. So, I mean, it is just kind of an, tells you about if you don't regulate people coming in and cutting and doing all of that stuff, these things can happen. It's pretty devastating to the nature there. So what they did is they have planted a replacement species, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, casuarina. And with the small number of Bermuda cedars that they do have left, they have been found to be resistant to the scale insects. And scale insects, I kind of went online and started to do a little bit of research on that, and I had to stop because it was totally making me itch and freak out. It's just like learning about lice or something. It was just like gross. Anyways, I just thought that was really interesting. And so that is Bermuda cedar. Okay, so there's that. Now, the uses by animals, because these trees are evergreen, all cedar, they're workhorses all year round for birds and other wildlife, providing cover from predators, but also for bad weather. And so birds are going to eat the small cones all through the winter. And white-tailed deer, mule deer, they're going to eat the foliage. Foxes, rabbits, raccoons, possums, coyotes, and skunks, they eat the fruits and the leaves. And it's funny because when I go out to my mom's out in Prineville, my mother-in-law's, she has a bunch of arborvitae, and it's funny, you can see totally where the deer eat away all of the foliage on there. So it's totally, yep, those mule deer, they go crazy for it. So as far as for us, how we use cedar, a lot of times there's, fencing, decking, furniture for like dressers and storage. People are known to use that because it smells, and it keeps moths away. But also, of course, obviously Christmas, right? Wreaths. There is a species of, it's called incense cedar, Calicedrus decurrens. It's sold in stores around Christmas time all over the United States because of how it smells. It's just really yummy smelling, really Christmassy. So people like it, so that's why they have it around Christmas time. Also, the essential oil, a lot of times people use that. I actually have cedar oil, and it helps alleviate lots of inflammation, and it's supposed to help with sleep. I don't know if it does, at least not for my kiddo, but it can. Cedars are native. The false cedars are native to North America, but some of them have become invasive, especially when they're left unmanaged. They become really dense stands, and they can choke out other species. And so I know there's a lot of farmers in Eastern Oregon that will often cut the cedar trees down, or the junipers, because when there's a drought, they really, really suck up water, and so they don't want cedar trees, or quote unquote false cedars. They don't want the cedar trees there because they just suck up too much water. And it's a problem. So it can become invasive. And there you go. So guys, that was cedar, and that was a lot. I know that was a lot. The next one we're going to do is Oregon ash, so stay tuned on that, and we'll talk to you later.